Well, hey, everybody, what's going on? It's Dr. Mondo, and it's Tuesday night. How you guys doing? It's good to be back here with you. I don't know if you could tell, but we're in a new location. Yeah, you can see this brick wall was not here last week. I like the swing, though. I could be able to do the swing a little bit, too. Swing around like that and use my hands a little more freely. We have a new location that we're going to be shooting the show from. We're so excited. Pachamama. This place keeps me fueled up. This is not beer. Let's be clear about that. This is cold brew, okay? This is Pachamama, and we're coming to you live here from Pachamama's Midtown. This is where their roastery is located at, but on top of their roastery, too, this is also where they brew coffee and where we hang out all the time. So what better place to host the Facebook Live show, rewriting my story, than here? So we're here tonight, and if you're in the Sacramento area and you want to come down and actually watch live, you have that option now, as we'll be doing the show live every single Tuesday night. And when we have in-person guests, you could hang out and meet the in-person guests that we have. We had Rob on the road recently. We'll have some more guests that I'm excited to line up, Chef Boyer Lizzie. So when we have guests that are in person, you can come meet them. So that's really a cool feature of what we have going on. Tonight, we don't have any live guests, but I promise to you, that's live in person, but I promise to you that the guests that we do have through Facebook Live are going to be amazing. All of them have one thing in common. Well, they have many things in common, but one of the things they have in common is that they're all not first timers to this program. They've all been on. In fact, maybe we can at some point, Aaron, who does an amazing job on my social media, does an amazing job with all those videos you're seeing. Aaron Yabes, you follow him on Instagram, unbelievable. But maybe Aaron can go in there and he can actually share the show links, or someone can, to BJ Swingle, Gary Stotler, Anthony Masiello, all amazing guests that we had on at previous times, sharing their story on this show. So if you want to hear about their stories, you can go back and watch those episodes, but don't do that tonight. Tonight, you need to hear what they're going to say about this crazy high divorce rate for people who go through drastic weight loss. 75% of people who lose a drastic amount of weight end up getting divorced. That's what the statistic says. So I know what you're thinking. Tonight, we're going to actually unpack that. Why is that, is what you're probably thinking. What's the history behind the statistic? We'll talk about that. And then, I think, again, this show is about story. So we also want to get a chance to highlight story for you. And we want to hear stories and testimonies of people that have actually gone through drastic weight loss. And the three guests that we have tonight have gone through it. I've gone through it myself. And so we're actually going to hear from them. How did your relationship, how did your marriages, all three of them were married at the time of their weight loss. How did your marriage get challenged or impacted by drastic weight loss? So we'll hear more about that from them tonight. Again, I hope all of you are logging on. If you're logging on, do me a favor. I know the viewers are coming in, but this is my little thing I'm going to say at the beginning. Beat the algorithm, guys. We have to beat this algorithm. This is Facebook makes it really hard unless you pay to get your stuff out there. So we want to make this an organic show that we can just move out there and get people to watch this. How many of you know, if you know this to be true, and I'm about to say, give it a like or a love, but how many people know that this is something that someone needs to watch tonight, right? Can I get an amen for that? Someone needs to be watching this now. You need to be watching this, but other people need to watch this too, because you are not alone. There's a lot of people that are either going through the weight loss process, or they're scared to go through weight loss because of this thing right here. They know their marriage, their relationship's going to be challenged. It might potentially change. It might be threatened. Or they've gone through the transformation, and part of the kickback they got from their friends and their family and their partners made it really difficult for them to keep going, and they gained some of the weight back. Now, it's not scapegoating. It's just saying it was an element of their story. So people need to watch this. Hit the share button for me. Share this to groups. Share this to pages. Share this to your friend's timeline, okay? Just let anyone that you think needs to hear this message know what we are talking about here tonight on this broadcast. So again, I want to welcome everyone. If you're just joining us for the first time, I'm Dr. Mondo. I'm a licensed therapist. I did some academic research with NBC's The Biggest Loser. I've gone through drastic weight loss myself. I liked it so much, I went through it 8 times. The 8th time was my final time. I said, I'm not going to do it anymore after that. I went whole foods plant-based almost 11 months ago, and that was my final time. I said, I think I'm good now. I don't need to try this anymore. You know, I think I'm going to retire from the yo-yo game. So anyway, my passion is to help you though, because I've been through this process. I know how your life changes when you lose weight. I know what it's like to look in the mirror and not recognize yourself. I know what it's like to get new attention, you know, from the opposite sex. I understand all of that, right? And so much so that we created a research study that looked at developing a roadmap. And my goal has been, and that's what we're doing around the country right now with the Slaying Shame tour that some of you have seen. We'll be in Chicago in early August. We just were in New Jersey and Baltimore and Boston. But we're all over right now spreading a message that basically says that weight loss is not going to fix everything in your life. That if you want to be successful long-term, you have to rewrite your story. If you want to be successful long-term and end up at this destination of success, we have to actually be able to give you a roadmap so you know what to expect. Again, we're not getting anywhere right nowadays without Waze or Google Maps, right? Whatever your preferred map device is that you use, right? Or your app that you use, you're not getting anywhere without a map. Turn-by-turn guidance. You want to know what to expect as you go through this process of getting to a destination. Well, for you, the destination is being in a place where you experience long-term health. And how many people think they would probably be helpful to know what changes you're going to encounter along the way? You know, I find so often people say to me, I wish I knew, like tonight, my relationship was going to change. I wish I knew that it was really common to have resistance from people that I love, people that support me. Resistance to my food choices, resistance to the new body that I have, resistance to how I'm showing up in the world and being more confident and stepping up for myself and setting boundaries in ways I never did before. I wish I knew that was coming, because if I knew, I could expect it. And we like to be able to know what's coming, because when we expect it, we can account for it. So for some of you tonight, the goal is simply this, to give you some education that your marriage, your relationship is going to be challenged during drastic weight loss. Here's a huge spoiler alert though. There's lots of hope in tonight's message. This is not all hopeless. This is not all hopeless. If you have not tuned into this broadcast before, maybe you think tonight is a night where we just talk about hopeless stuff, trying to get people to tune in. Absolutely not. Every message we share is about empowerment, and we are empowering you tonight, regardless of how bad it is in your marriage right now or how bad it is in your relationship, that you can actually use tonight's topic to be the springboard to having the hard conversations. And you know what? That's really what this boils down to. This statistic shows us couples are more likely to get divorced after drastic weight loss, just like they're more likely to potentially get divorced after suffering other gigantic, huge, unexpected, life-altering instances, right? So when things catch a couple off guard, it puts them into crisis. And if they already didn't have a good way of navigating crisis, they're going to lean on that as a survival mechanism, yet again, when faced with this new crisis, which in this case is a great crisis, right? It's good to lose weight, but there's a lot that comes with it. And again, the message you'll hear again, the hope is found in this. If you have the difficult conversations, you will not be part of this high statistic of folks that get divorced. It can actually make your marriage better. It can actually make your relationships better. I know it's hard to really believe that, but tonight we're going to give you some of those skills. We're going to talk about why we think it is. We're going to talk about our experiences. And then at the end of tonight, we're going to give you some skills and some feedback on what you can do, some tools to implement right now so you can be successful. All right, let's check in over here with our viewers. Looks like we do have some viewers logging in. I don't know if are the comments, do we have any comments coming through right now, Aaron? Comments are coming through. So for whatever reason, I'm not seeing the comments come through on my side, but I'm going to take your guys' word for it. So the comments are there, right? People are reacting. Okay, people are sharing it. Good. Let's get into this real quick. So before I invite on my guests, I want to just do a quick little background on this topic. So first of all, the first thing that I'm gonna mention is this: the 75% statistic. I've had lots of people writing in, sharing. You know, hey, you need to look at all the variables. You know, how who did this study and where did these numbers come from? Where can I find it in academic research? So let me unpack that a little bit for you guys right at the onset. Now, first of all, 75% is actually a baseline number. It's been quoted to say that some couples who go through drastic weight loss, and I'll get to the sum in a minute, the number is as high as 80 or 85%. Now, here's a limitation to just kind of give you guys into a little bit of the nerdy side of weight loss. A lot of weight loss research, and I found this when I was doing my dissertation with Biggest Loser, a lot of weight loss research is typically done in really sterilized communities where people are going through drastic weight loss by means of surgical ends. So people are getting bariatric surgery, they're getting lap band surgery, they're getting sleeves, okay? And so the thing is that those, you might say, that's a pretty interesting variable to throw into the mix. Weight loss tends to happen faster when you do it through surgical methods, right? There is maybe this potential belief that some people would say, some criticism people would say, that sometimes people, when they do the weight loss surgery, they're looking for the quick fix, and maybe they're not willing to do the other work necessary to be successful long-term. So those are all just interesting commentary around this. But when we hear this statistic, often what's been quoted has been about bariatric surgery patients. So again, in bariatric populations, because that is the majority of who we're studying when we're studying weight loss. It's bariatric populations, and in the surgical weight loss community, the statistic goes as high as 85% of couples will separate. They will divorce at some point post drastic weight loss. So one of the things that we could say off the bat is that already we might poke some holes in the statistic and say there is some hope, just in the sense of knowing that, you know, for some people are tuning in because they have had surgery by, had weight loss by surgical means. And again, there's nothing wrong with how you get there, but you might say, okay, well, the majority of us didn't lose our weight that way, or we're not looking to lose our weight by surgery. So there is something unique about non-surgical methods of weight loss. So it is fair to assume that that number being as high as 80 or 85% may not apply to folks who are losing it in the more traditional way through diet, exercise, right? Modifying life choices. So there's that. The other thing to point out, though, to you also is that in the research that they did on bariatric patients, what they found is that, and here was, if the patient was heavy at the time they got married, there's an 80 to 85% chance that the relationship's going to break up within 2 years of surgery. If a patient's long-term marriage was a normal weight when the marriage began, that marriage is probably in pretty good shape to withstand the changes following surgery. So that's an interesting point to also acknowledge too, that what they're saying is that often people who were overweight, the theory was in some of this commentary of the research that, you know, they were theorizing, well, hey, maybe people who are overweight, we know sometimes are people pleasers. They tend to kind of just accept whatever comes their way. Maybe they took a job that they didn't love. Maybe they end up in a relationship where maybe they were suffering some level of abuse, or even if it's emotional neglect. You know, maybe there's something not healthy about those relationships or those circumstances. And so weight loss was like kind of this catalyst for them to change all aspects of their life. So they're saying there's a difference between, did you start the relationship obese, or did you become obese while you were in the relationship, in terms of how that impacts the statistics. So that's a little bit of background on the statistics. You guys still with me? Any reaction to that? Wow, like, yeah. Are we going into too much class mode here, Aaron? Is this too much like a lecture here? No? These are facts, hashtag facts. Okay, this is the last point I'm gonna give you, I promise, and then we're gonna get to tonight's guests, because they're eagerly waiting right now to join us. And again, meanwhile, I'm gonna wet my palate with tonight's sponsor. This is not beer, once again, if you're just joining us. This is coffee, and I'm addicted. It's, once it hits your lips, man, it is so good. It's cold brew, brought to you by Pachamama. Brought to you by Pachamama. That's where we're at here tonight, live from Midtown at the Pachamama Studio. See, I can already get the energy going. I'm talking faster. Micro Machine Man, hashtag. Let me just break this down to you too. So in my program, the Rewriting Your Story program on my website, drmondo.org, we do talk about this stuff. We have 8 stages of change, and at stage 6, which typically comes post weight loss, we say your relationships are going to change. And it's common to experience resistance to your change. So we're trying to tell you up front in our program that you're going to experience resistance. Now, that resistance tends to come most from the people closest to you. You better believe your partner, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your husband, right? Your spouse, your wife. They're going to probably be the closest person to you. So it's common to resist, even if they know the change is good. Like they may have their entire life been saying, you need to lose weight, you need to get healthy. And then you do, and now they're protesting. Now they're insecure about the attention that you're getting. Now they all of a sudden don't like that Stella got her groove back. You know, so those things are really common. It's common in friends too. It's common to have levels of resistance. Resistance was not a marker in my qualitative research of success, meaning you could have everyone in your whole world resisting that fact that you're losing weight. Does it make it hard to lose weight? Yeah, but what we found is that your response to resistance, how you respond to people at times sabotaging your journey, or at times just, you know, not being all that supportive, how you respond to them will dictate whether or not you are successful. So you hold the keys. Because I found people that were really hell-bent on rewriting their story have really unsupportive people around them. And guess what? They just found new communities of supportive people. I'm not making it sound easy because it's not. It wasn't easy for them. It was heartbreaking. In fact, one of our guests tonight, Gary's going to talk a little bit about that. He talked about that in his live, where he had that, all of his friends and family, there was resistance everywhere. And he had to make some difficult choices in order to live out the life he's living out now. So resistance, as they say, is futile, but resistance is also common. And part of the reason it's common is because of stages of change. Again, one of our guests tonight, Gary, I'll mention again, had brought up stages of change. If you're not familiar with stages of change, what it basically is a model of change that looks at, you know, the psychology behind when people change and how they get ready to change. And it's really, really common for a household to not have everyone at the same stage of ready to take action and change something at the same time. So to have that line up, like Tim and Heather Kaufman, an amazing couple. I know you've heard them on here before, amazing journey. But if I remember it correctly, Tim started his journey about 1.5 years prior to Heather's journey, okay? Now they stayed together. But Tim's stage of change, when he was at action, Heather was in pre-contemplation, right? She was just thinking about changing or thinking about changing. So the stages of change are really important, that people around you aren't always at the same place with change that you are. It's important, as we talk about in stage 7 of the program, to have people who speak the language that get and understand this stuff to be in your corner and on your team. That's super important in order to be successful long term. So again, this stuff happens. It's really common. And the final point we'll make too is that, man, there are some things that change. We talked about attention from the opposite sex. What if the way that you bonded was going out to dinner every Friday night and having ice cream and pizza? My wife and I, that used to be our thing. So we've had to change what we do on Friday nights. And at first it was really hard to give that up. I'm not going to lie. So there's lots of things that you have to unpack. And those are even some surface level ones. There's deeper ones we'll talk about here tonight. But again, the point being is that what we learn from the statistics, it's common for marriages, relationships to be challenged by drastic weight loss. This is not a recipe for you. It's not an excuse for you not to try to lose weight or get healthy. Nope. It's an invitation for you to do the work necessary. There's more work to be done. But if you do the work, you end up with a healthier you, with a rewritten story, and a healthier marriage as a result. After all, isn't that often what motivates our transformation, wanting all of those things? So why not just know that you'll get those things? You just got to put the work in all those areas. And I'm oversimplifying it because sometimes your partner's not the same spot that you're at. We'll talk tonight about, growing apart, things like that. It's very difficult, but I want to paint the picture that it's very difficult, but it's also not a sentence for divorce. That's not what we're trying to share here tonight. So we'll jump more into that. So, okay, I'm going to tell you about our guest again. Let's make sure. One of our guests earlier, we made her wait so long she went to sleep on us. And so anyway, I'm not sure, did she go back to sleep? She's gone. I don't know what happened to her. She's gone, but we will try to get her back on in a minute. If you're on the East Coast, let us know about it. What's it like to watch the show on the East Coast? Out here, we still have sunlight. It's there's still sunlight to be had out here. So we have a couple guests that are still on camera here. Guys, can you hear me okay?
Yep, sounds good.
I can hear you, yep.
Identify yourselves, gentlemen.
Gary.
Gary.
I'm Gary Stotler from Denver, Colorado, and I think I was on. Oh gosh, it's been about 2-3 weeks ago, and chatted a little bit about life and losing weight and running.
Yeah, that was awesome, man. Good to have you back on, Gary. And then we have Anthony. Anthony, I think you were. What episode did you? I can't remember the number of episode, but it was one of the first ones we ever had.
Yeah, I think it was one of the first 3 or 4 that you
yeah,
had.
it definitely was.
I was going to try to pretend I was Gary, but I'm Anthony Masiello.
Yeah, we can't we didn't let you do it because we put your names on the screen. And there's a third guest. Do we know what happened to our third guest, BJ Swingle?
BJ Singles. She was trying to get back on. I don't know. She said she was having trouble with her microphone. She said if it didn't work out, then she just wasn't going to be able to participate.
Oh man, that really is a bummer because BJ, we're looking forward to having you on for a variety of reasons. You just great perspective. So BJ, I hope there's a way to get it. Try it again. We'll bring you on camera, and if for some reason it's not working, we'll roll with that. But anyway, guys, we'll dive into this topic. I know we're about halfway through already. Here comes BJ, and I'll try getting her on. So. I know that when you hear this statistic, again, I want to get away from, it's so easy to argue about, is it high enough? Is it too high? Hey, BJ, can you hear us okay?
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you great. Look at that. See, it's all meant to be. BJ, you were also real quick before I'll finish that thought in a minute, but can you tell everyone who you are and tell them who you are? And you were on this broadcast once before. I interviewed you, it was probably about 2 months ago, right?
Right, yes. So hi, I'm BJ Swingle, and I eat plants.
That's it. What else is there to say? I eat plants. There you go. It looks like, did we lose Anthony? Okay, well, you know what? This may be a common theme tonight. We're trying to get all these people on the feed at once. But I'll play with that. Don't worry.
I may be here
as we get settled in here. But the initial reaction, tell me your initial reaction. 75%, whether that's the number or not, whether it's higher, whether it's lower, when we have this many people that are struggling with divorce post weight loss, are you surprised by that statistic or no? Are you think it's, you're pretty unfair? You go, yeah, that seems about right because you've been through weight loss. You know what it's like.
Are you asking me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so sorry. Anyone could jump in, and yeah, BJ, why don't you jump in first? You're on the hot seat. What are your thoughts when you hear that statistic?
I guess I don't take it. I don't feel it personally because I'm not in that situation. So I guess I don't know. It doesn't even faze me. I guess because I'm not in that situation. I am surprised. Because I'm not in that situation, I'm surprised that statistic is so high.
So when you say you're not in that situation, like you didn't get divorced is what you mean, yeah?
I didn't get divorced. I don't think I have any fear of getting divorced. Yeah.
But have you noted, and we'll get more into this tonight, but have you found that it has been difficult? Like when you went through your weight loss process, was there anything that was new that you and your husband had to adjust to?
If there was, I was oblivious to it.
Interesting. Okay. Now, Gary, I know that, from your perspective, because we've talked about this before, that I don't think, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, that you're very shocked by this number. And for you, that you're pretty aware of, like, there is a lot of changes that come with weight loss, and it is challenging to marriages, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like we talked after the show last time, the 75% doesn't surprise me whatsoever. And unfortunately, it was because I was oblivious that there were no changes and I wasn't paying attention to all the changes between my spouse and I and my friends and I that I ended up divorced. Because I was just going mindlessly through life and I set a goal and I was going after it. And that's ultimately what ended everything.
And how long has it been since you guys have been divorced now, or did that process start?
Within the last 6 months.
Last 6 months. Okay. So I imagine just for you, it's probably hard. Is it hard to talk about this stuff, or where are you at now with all of it?
It's extremely hard. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
as we've talked, we're always going through a healing process of everything. So I guess this is one of the ways that I'm able to heal through everything, is talking about it, and hopefully talking about it in a way that is positive, and hopefully so that other people don't have to follow the same path.
Yeah, well, I mean, I applaud you, because I know that's been like something that came up a lot in your Facebook interview, was just how, it could be easy to just turn a blind eye to all this and outrun it, or try to outrun it, but you're facing it head on. And I think that's really courageous of you, man. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there that can relate to this stuff. And so I really appreciate you taking time to join us and talk about it, man.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Let's see if we can help somebody.
Yeah, I think that's what we're going to try to get into. So why do we think that, and I'm going to try to get Anthony back on here too as we're looking. So when you hear that, what are some theories? Like, BJ, I know that for you, the number was surprising, but when you hear the number, what are some of the theories that you have about why people might be struggling?
So struggling with their marriage, or?
Yeah, like why that number might be so high, yeah.
So I mean, just from, I don't want to upset anyone, but I'm just wondering, was it because maybe their why wasn't grounded, or maybe the marriage wasn't strong before going in? I'm not an expert on this, so I don't want to. I mean, I'm just speculating.
Yeah, well, and I could say off the bat to that, just I think that those things matter. So your why being strong enough could matter, but I think, like Gary, you probably experienced in your case that your why was so strong that you pretty much decided at a certain point that you were going to go to you were going to reach your goal. And was it that maybe your wife wasn't changing with you, and you guys you weren't growing in the same direction, or maybe you could speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I've said before, I think for the longest time, because we had both been on our own journeys together for a very long time. Me losing nearly 200 pounds, her losing 100 pounds. So
Wow.
it's not like one of us did something and the other person didn't do something. But something that I've been able to look back and figure out is, at some point our habits changed. And what I mean by that is when we started walking together. And so when you're walking, you naturally communicate. And then as you spend less and less time together for training for different races, or with time commitments with work or with the kids, or just however life takes you, you naturally spend less time together. And then with your habits, like you mentioned, going out for ice cream, there was no longer date nights or ordering pizza on Friday night and watching movies, so I think we never really replaced some of those habits that we did together. We spent less time apart. And you've mentioned the Rewriting Your Story stage 6, and I watched that today based on your recommendation. And
Awesome.
So many of that hit home on, just the way we live, and the way that when we change. And one thing that I know that we're focused on the weight loss aspect, but one thing you brought up in the videos is the alcoholism, or, just like the change with drug and alcohol abuse is very similar. When one person changes, it creates change throughout the entire family and the entire friendships. And whether that's good or bad or indifferent is not the question. Change creates more change. So I thought that was very interesting to kind of step back. And I guess with that, that's another reason that the 75% doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and if some of you have gone through the program, maybe you'll remember what Gary's talking about. We bring up the example in those video lessons in the program of change is change, basically, and that it's so common, like we see in alcoholic families, where the entire family will organize themselves around the addiction, right? And the whole time the family will be kind of just rallying to try to get whether it's mom, dad, whoever it is in the family system, try to get them sober, right? And that's the goal, of course. They want their dad or their mom or their kid to be healthy and sober. But the minute that sobriety kicks in, it often sends the whole family into disarray. because there's role confusion. People don't know where to go. People don't know how to perform or be a part of the family. And there's this resentment towards the change. Like, okay, finally now you change, or it was now, now you're the reason everything's different. And so often one of the things they find with alcoholics or people in recovery is that they have to go through this initial phase of going like, wait a minute, this is change that's beneficial for me and for all of us, but I'm getting some resistance and kickback. And so, yeah, it's very, very common. And that's part of the theory again, and we're just theorizing, but that's part of the theory of, I think, why we see similar things happening in terms of this number being so high with the divorce rate post weight loss. So Anthony, I know you're jumping in here too. We're talking about the statistic being so high. You were actually the catalyst for us doing tonight's broadcast and rearranging the schedule. So tell me, what was your initial reaction? I know last week when you heard that number, it kind of really spoke to you. And were you surprised by that number when you heard it? And if so, why?
I'm not surprised by the number specifically. And it's already been talked about, because you can't detach like what we would just call major or really big weight loss with any other change that's going on in life. I mean, it's not.
BJ, are you able to hear Anthony, or is that just?
I hear Anthony.
You do? Interesting. I don't. Can you just translate everything he says?
Yeah.
I'm not sure why I can't hear him.
Can hear me?
Keep going, Anthony.
Okay. So I'm not surprised by the number, because when you have a significant life change, like losing hundreds of pounds, like 200 pounds, 150 pounds, 160 pounds, whatever it is, a lot of other things in your life are going to change. The way other people treat you and look at you and all of these things change as well. So it's not surprising to me that other aspects of life change. What I'm really wondering about with the statistics specifically is I don't want people to be confused and to think that it's has to be causal, right? It can be an associated statistic. So the reason that people are changing, the reason that somebody decided to take major action and change their life could be like, maybe that's the reason that there were other change. I don't want, I guess I'm concerned that I don't want people to not try to lose weight because they're afraid of this statistic. So I know that we can get a little bit more into that. I also want people to realize that just because something is associated doesn't mean that that's what causes that particular outcome. Does it make sense?
Does to me.
That does, and I heard you actually that time good. Around. And yeah, you were waxing. You were really explaining research and talking about causality and all those things, which I
so I want to make sure that confusion doesn't take place. And then also I want people to understand that I think in my relationship, communication was a big part of it. And because I did remain married, and I did so what you were explaining earlier, I did meet my wife when I was overweight. I continued to get bigger until the time we got married. And then after we married, I continued to get bigger. And then I lost weight, and her weight stayed the same. So we didn't go through this change together or anything. This was my thing. But again, I only have one experience. But in my experience, we communicated, and the whole reason that I was losing my weight is because I wanted to be better at this family thing. And
that goes back to your why. That why was tied into this change. Yeah, I wanted you to say more. Like when you say you're communicating, specifically, what did that look like? Did you guys just your communication was already open, and so this was just something we naturally were going through and talked about, or?
Yeah, we communicate very openly all the time. And what I mean by that is there was never room, because our communication was so open, there was never room to guess or to wonder what was going on. Or she didn't have to wonder why I was losing weight, or why I was doing this, or why I wanted to start running, or why, like she knew before she ever had to ask. And it turned out that she was supportive. So I'm not saying it's a formula that's going to work for everybody, or that it could or couldn't work for, that it will or won't work for other people the same way it did work for me. But I do at least want to share one example. That's how my case went.
Well, and
go ahead, BJ. I was going to jump to you, because I know that when we were talking all as a group, this week that you had mentioned. You said, you know what, this is like it's a sensitive topic for me and David. It's a sensitive topic, I know, just from doing therapy for tons of couples. So your own experience maybe in just sharing, like, this is a hard topic to breach, and how do you have open communication when you're so driven to change something about yourself, but you're in this partnership?
Well, and and I'm trying to be sensitive on what I say, because I don't want to sound like I'm sounding better than Gary's situation, because I know Gary's situation probably is the same situation that I'm going through, but something happened differently, and I don't know what that pinpoint was for his situation. But I'm just saying, in for my situation, David and we're doing this whole lifestyle change together. Um, on our first date, I had just lost weight loss number 4, doing Weight Watchers, and I told him on that date, I decided to open up and said, look, I've lost weight. I don't know if I want to be dating, because I just know I'll gain the weight back, and I kind of like where my life is right now. But then he confessed to me his weight issues that he had. So we went into this relationship with this whole knowing of our struggles with food and our weights. And so I wouldn't say that was the premise of our relationship. We had, we're just best friends. And so I think that's what made it work for us. And, I got married to him when I was at my thinnest because of the weight loss that I was doing then. But I gained the weight back because it wasn't grounded in my why I lost my weight then, and my lifestyle. So he and I both went through this weight loss. I gained weight, he gained weight, and then I started to lose it again. And so it was this whole dance. But then once when we both found this way of eating and doing this weight loss together, it was not just a weight loss. For him, it was a health journey to avoid, certain health issues he was trying to avoid. And to me, it was the beginning of the weight loss, but now it's turned into the health journey. And so now that he and I both have this mindset of the health journey, and we've gotten away from the weight loss is, yes, the side effect that we've been experiencing now. I just think it makes it grounded for us. And we're a family. And then, and for Anthony and his wife, they met young. My husband and I, we met when we were older, and we had other relationships. And I feel like we know what it's like to be on the other side. And I think we know that to us, the grass is not greener on the other side. This is our greener pasture.
So I appreciate all of that. Gary, I want to have you jump in, because I know that BJ made reference to some of your story and making sure that she wanted to where she was coming from, even in her experience and feedback. But then the other part of it too is that we had talked about just you mentioned growing apart, and and I'm just wondering for you, like, as you hear some of Anthony's story and BJ's story, I know everyone's situation is different. So, like, in your situation, when you look at how high this number is, do you think there was an instance in your marriage where the two of you did just grow apart, like your stages of change weren't lining up?
Yeah, and don't worry about offending me. You're never gonna offend me. So just we'll clear that up now. You can save that. So unfortunately, it wasn't even just my marriage. It was most of my relationships. And yeah, I do feel like I grew apart. And I'm still unpacking all the reasons why I think I did that. But I was one person. Nikki and I met when we were 16, and we were high school sweethearts, and we were together for almost 20 years. And so, I mean, a lot can happen in 20 years, and when you become, she's even said it was like you died and woke up as a new person. So what do you, at that point in time, there was obviously a lack of a communication. There was obviously some pitfalls throughout. So it's not like it was one person was to blame or the other person is to blame, or both, everybody's horrible people. It's a natural progression of relationships. And unfortunately, I obviously wasn't good enough at, being on my side of the relationship to pay attention. So I think it goes back to communication. It sounds like both of you guys have awesome communication, which I think is probably a good moral to start with, when people are when people are looking at that statistic, if they get worried about it, I would start with communication with your significant other.
The other thing that I would think, and because I do know you a little bit, Gary, and I really admire your authenticity. I mean, I would just the fact that you said don't ever worry about offending me. It's impossible. You can never offend me. And I think that comes with a significant amount of courage and kind of ambition and a strive to be the best that you want to be. And I think that's the kind of person who's going to go for what they want to do. So there are other people who don't have that and might end up, and I see plenty of them, who would end up just staying in a relationship that maybe they weren't 100% satisfied with for whatever reason, or and I feel like the confidence that I've gained personally from losing the weight, and then everything else in my life that changed around it, my desire to learn, my desire to grow, my desire to further kind of invest in myself, has that confidence came slowly over time. And I wonder if it's a sense of people gaining that confidence and wanting everything in their life to be like true and real and authentic, and that could be a way that people grow apart from each other.
Yeah.
Not to say it's a bad thing, meaning that maybe there are plenty of people who stay in relationships that maybe they end up not maybe they shouldn't stay in, or maybe they don't really want to stay in, but they don't feel like they can. And then maybe making some other significant life change gives them the ability to make their entire life more authentic.
And I know I want to get into that a little bit more too in a moment, Anthony, because that was a point that you had discussed a lot, which was being authentic, and I really agree with that. And what I'll say to kind of all three of you guys really in that sense is that, I think what we talk about, at least in the program, is that stage 5 is really the stage where you get to this crossroad, and maybe you guys can relate, but you get to this crossroad at a certain point in your weight loss transformation when you're starting to get closer to your goal weight, and some of that resistance is happening and so much is changing, where your why gets tested. And if you really want to change, you're going to have to really set some boundaries with people in your life that may not be ready to change. And you might have to stand up for yourself and for some things that maybe might mean sacrificing some of those relationships being as close, or maybe sacrificing having them all together in order to be true and authentic to yourself and the story that you're rewriting. And so I think it's a really good point that you bring up there, Anthony, and I would agree with it. And a lot of the coaching that we give in the program, and what I would with counseling it too, is just, it's like, Gary, I know you had mentioned, you have to be patient and flexible. So you have to be patient and flexible, but you have to, on one hand, be patient and flexible, but also be firm. And for people that have been overweight, they tend to have a struggle being firm. The patient and flexibility is usually a lot easier than being firm and sticking to your guns about being authentic to yourself and standing up for what you want. So it can be really challenging to do both. It's really common to just do one and not the other. And so it's a really tall order. This stuff is super complicated, and there is not one size fits all. That's the other thing that you're kind of mentioning here too.
Well, I mean, that's the whole aspect of being a people pleaser. People pleasers are typically never thin, because they're just always trying to please everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And then you become the one that ends up coming last. I think, did all of you guys feel that at a certain point that, regardless of how it was received by your partner, that, when I did the research of The Biggest Loser, I remember one of the contestants said that there was this moment that he stood on the scale and he looked at his wife and he said, I know you're on this journey with me, you're doing it too, but I'm sorry, today is the day that I have to do this for me, regardless of what happens with you. He's kind of like saying, whether you stay on your journey or you get derailed, I'm going to continue on this path. I think there needs to be a point almost, right, for everyone where they make that declaration. And then you don't know, it's scary because you're not sure how someone might respond. But did you guys all have similar moments in your journey of kind of having to declare that to your spouse or to the world around you?
Well, I have that with my running. I feel like I run and David doesn't. And there's a time where I said, I have to have this. This is what I'm doing. And I mean, it sets us, is that what you're saying? Like something like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying. You know, making that declaration. So for some people, it's the exercise component. Other people, it might be, look, I know that we go to this restaurant every Friday night, but the fact that we're not going here anymore doesn't mean I don't love you or that we can't still have rituals and ways of bonding and connecting, but I just can't get down like that, so to speak. You know, so yeah, Anthony and Gary, did you guys have similar moments where you had to kind of do that? I know, Anthony, your wife was really, it sounds like the communication was there, so maybe she was receptive, but was there ever any kickback that she even had towards some of those changes?
The other thing for me personally is I am very used to being different. Like, I was vegetarian since the time, actually, I was vegetarian and sober from the time I met my wife, and she enjoyed eating meat and drinking beer, like, daily. So we would actually go to a diner, and the waiter or the waitress would come over with a beer and a coffee, or a beer and a cup of water, and I would automatically get the beer, and she would get the coffee or the water, and then when the waiter or waitress would walk away, we would trade places. And then the same thing would happen when a grilled cheese and tomato sandwich came out, and like the Yankee pot roast dinner, and like the pot roast went in front of me because I was this big guy, and she got the grilled cheese, and then when the waiter walked away, we would trade. But I'm just saying,
so they would just make that mistake in assuming, is what you're saying. Like, that wasn't.
I mean, that's just kind of a funny. Yeah. That's just a kind of a funny part of it. But I guess what I mean is that, like, I was always used to doing my thing. Like, I did what I thought I needed to do for myself, and I didn't try to bring anyone else in with me, and I didn't try to, I didn't push anyone away for doing their thing either. So I guess I've always been, that kind of, like, I've just been doing me, and the same thing with, friends, and, like, I mean, for the longest time, I'm shopping in the big and tall store, so I'm not buying the same clothes and stuff as my friends. I didn't actually have any overweight friends, or yeah, I didn't have any overweight friends. So, like, I was always used to just being kind of different. So I think it helped me to not. I never really had that piece where I never felt like I fit in anyway. So I didn't all of a sudden feel like I don't fit in anymore, or I wasn't like the oddball out, because I was always the oddball out. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense, and it makes me, Gary, think of your story, because I know in your story it was really the polar opposite, in the sense that, like, a lot of your meaning making, with friends, was completely thrown in, and they felt like that you were probably abandoning them, like you were stopping to be one of the guys, right? To lose the identity that you had formed. So much of it was around the unhealthy stuff that got you overweight, and then when you went to lose the weight and take a stand, I know that there was probably a lot of resistance, and so it was a huge rub in terms of your disruption to your inner peace to have all that.
Yeah, and I think because I was losing part of who I was by being obese, and there was resistance from outside of my relationship. I think I just put blinders on, and I knew going in that when I do this, I just can't care what anybody else says. I just have to go. And the old golfing buddies that I used to play golf with, oh, well, where'd Gary go? Well, he's out running on a Sunday morning instead of playing golf with us on Sunday morning. And I knew they were making fun of me behind my back, so I just went and I just did what I needed to do. And unfortunately, I think putting blinders on in one aspect of my life, I put blinders on in every aspect of my life, and I just said, here's where I'm going, and I just went and I did it. Like Anthony talked about, that level, I have a level of self-confidence that I've never ever had before. I mean, my entire life. And it's not like I woke up one day and said, hey, I can do whatever I want. It's all of those little bitty wins that just happen day after day after day. The next thing you know, you wake up and there's no limit to where you think you can go. And if, again, those blinders went on, and I said, I can go wherever I want as long as I just keep moving forward. And so, maybe one of the best aspects of my new personality is, one of the worst aspects of my personality, just because I didn't let anything or anyone stand in my way, whether they should have or not.
Well, and I'll say to that too, just kind of like helping because you make sense of that, because I know that you're not the only one watching this broadcast who could probably relate to that. I mean, like, that's a survival mechanism, and I think for you were fully in survival mode at that point. It was like, in order for me to be successful and lose this weight, I have to like put these blinders on and go, and and kind of just keep going regardless of who's coming with me or who's getting in my way. So yeah, looking back, it would have been great for you to maybe be able to have a little bit of flexibility in there mixed in, but I think that was probably you utilizing what you had at that point to get you through. And yeah, I mean, that unfortunately you can look back now. I mean, do you look back, Gary, and are there regrets to how it all happened, or is there, like, I know you're talking about making peace, but is there mostly like a level of peace with, I know that had to happen in some ways.
There's a lot of sadness, I guess you would say. I mean, I lost pretty much anybody that I'd ever loved and anybody that ever loved me. And so I guess part of my making peace is trying to get over some of that sadness.
Yeah.
I'm angry at me. And so, I mean, getting over that is, there's a level of sadness with that as well. But yeah, mainly just I want to know what I did wrong. So one, I don't repeat the mistakes again in future relationships. And two, I want to, like we talked about, I want to make sure that other people don't follow the same mistakes that I made. Cause now that I know there's a better way to do it, just being conscious of some of these things would have been a great thing. And we talked about,
and I'll say this to you guys out there is that, Gary, I think, we know, and I can relate to this too. Avoidance is one of my greatest defense mechanisms, and you putting the blinders on, I can do that with the best of them too. And I think, one of the messages and the takeaways for everyone, and including yourself, and that self-knowledge is that, sometimes there are certain things that we can't outrun, or, literally in some cases, that we have to just acknowledge head on. And going back to Anthony and BJ's points of the open communication, I think that is a huge takeaway if you're watching tonight, that, regardless of where you're at now, let tonight's broadcast be a catalyst. Like, make this, did you know that this was the statistic? Like, use this as a conversation starter. But at the same time, as much as you might say, like, you have to learn from that one aspect of it, you're also a great story about, conquering, tremendous, hurdles in terms of losing as much weight as you did, and also rewriting your story and doing all the stuff that you did with the running and continue to do, and how you're helping people. So, yeah, I definitely know that it's not something that you're totally defined by any means. I do want to say that. I want to get to a couple comments here too. There's people that are joining in. A lot of times I can tell when there's really deep and engaging conversation, because the comments kind of just dwindle off, and tonight that's been the case. Todd Mano says, any change in life will exacerbate the emotions you have. If you're in love, the bond can strengthen. If you're already having problems, drastic weight loss will drive a chasm between you. The resentment comes from both sides. I think that's a similar point. I like that point, Todd. Thank you for sharing that, because it reminds me of, this idea that it's one of the myths in marriage that having kids will improve your marriage. Many people who have kids know that's ridiculous, but there are sometimes people that go like, oh, well, maybe if we just had a kid, like, that'll make it better. It doesn't. It just takes whatever state that you're currently in and throws new stress into that fire. And now whatever, ways that you have to cope, you're just going to double down on. And if those are unhealthy ways, or if it's not really totally communicating, then you're probably not going to communicate even, you'll be less likely to communicate then. And so, that's one of my advocacies, is to get people around this country and this world to know that drastic weight loss is a major life transition, in the same way of getting married, moving across the country, having kids, sending kids off to school, and being empty nesters. Like, these are all major transitions that couples a lot of times get thrown into crisis with, but we don't always account for that in how we're treating it and how we're supporting people. So I thought that was a really good point. Peg says, so where is the balance between sometimes needing to cut off those relationships and totally isolating yourself? I think that's a great question, guys. So I'm going to read it again. Peg, thank you for tuning in. Another former guest on our show. Peg says, so where is the balance between sometimes needing to cut off those relationships and isolating yourself? And I assume that she's meaning, like romantic relationships, but also just like any relationships, including friends, families. What's the balance between needing to cut those relationships entirely off and totally isolating yourself? Does anyone want to jump in on that one?
Well, I mean, I definitely can speak of that because my circle of friends changed drastically when I dove into this journey. So, I mean, I love my friends that I used to party with and drink and eat, and that's where our fun was. And we all had the same mentality of what we were doing. It was until I started diving into this new lifestyle, and when I started dipping my toe into it, they were just like, that's kind of weird, that's kind of different. And then when I really dove into it, and I had to start saying no to certain events, and I had to start saying no to all the things that I was doing with them, I had to isolate myself in order for me to be successful. My husband was always with me on that journey, so I didn't feel that it was bad. I just felt like this was what we were doing. And so, yeah, so I don't hang out with those friends anymore. I do see them once in a while. I feel that there's a little bit of uncomfortableness going on. I'm not sure if it's more just me, or if it's the elephant that's in the room, my drastic weight change, and the fact that it's just different. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, Anthony, did you want anything to comment on there before I jump in?
I think the other thing to realize is that tonight we can only get kind of one side of any of this because we each have half of a relationship. And I don't mean even just a marriage relationship. I mean, every single relationship there is involves, involves two people, right? Every relationship that I have with someone in my life. And I'm never in control of 100% of that, right? I think in the ideal case, I'm only in charge of half of that, right? I bring half to a relationship and someone else brings another half. So I just wanted to mention that also because I can do everything right? Or everything that's right for me. And if somebody else if that doesn't match with what's right for someone else, then it's a no-fault situation, but there's just no longer a match, right? So I just wanted to mention it that way and make sure that we have to think about it because there are two sides. And if it's a 50-50 relationship, because the other thing that we can see, and I have been involved in, where the relationship is like, I'm trying to carry 100% of a relationship, and that's very fragile, right? If I'm always trying to adapt and adjust and behave and whatever, then I've had kind of fragile relationships like that in my life where I do all the work and no one was, really participating. And so I think it depends, right? It depends on where it is. And every single case is going to be different. It just has to be a case by case kind of situation. Well, in general, I guess I tend not to bring generalities into the conversation because of that. I guess that's why I wanted to mention that.
But also, I feel that in order for me to be successful in this way of how I'm living, in order for me to be successful, I have to be confident in what I'm doing. That confidence may come across as being cocky or Miss Know-It-All or whatever it is, but that's just how I feel I have to be. So I was told that sometimes you have to be like, you kind of have to dumb it up in order to keep your friends and be like, well, I don't know what I'm doing is right. Maybe I'm just, who knows? But I feel what I'm doing is right. So I want to be confident in that. So I think that confidence tends to just really just scare away the people who. Right.
Well, that's the thing. People don't like change. I mean, right, Gary? It's like it would have probably been easy for you to just kind of like acquiesce to the room, and if the room still wanted to, drink beer or do whatever, like it would have been easy to do that, and you had to, like, all three of you were basically saying there was, if not a defining moment, a series of moments where you made a decision that you were going to be confident about the direction you were going. And even if it meant getting some pushback, and if the pushback was strong, that's when you had to kind of move away.
The truest statement of change is you have to change your lifestyle. You can't change your diet. You can't just change your diet. You can't just change your exercise routine. You have to change your entire lifestyle. And sometimes changing your lifestyle means you have to change who you are. You have to change your identity. You have to change how other people see you. You have to change your job. You have to change your mind. You have to change everything about yourself to be able to change. You have to unbecome who you are today to become who you want to be tomorrow. And, you know, unfortunately, you know, if you've known somebody for 20 years and you've been the same person for 20 years, if you unbecome that person, then you wake up as strangers. And it's not their fault. It's not your fault. It's just the path of life. And, you know, with people, you know, I got married, I had kids, I went one direction. Some other people got married, had kids, went another direction, and you wake up one day and you're just not friends. It's not that you hate them. It's not that anything even happened. You know, a really good friend of mine have talked about this. You like the unfortunate part of this is there was no fight, there was no argument, there was nothing that went wrong with some of these relationships. You just wake up one day and you haven't talked to these people for a year, and it's unfortunate, but that's one of the truest statements that, you know, and this person's lost hundreds of pounds as well. And so, I mean, it's not, I guess that's the hardest part is you just wake up one day and everything's different because you've been on your path and they've been on their path. So whether that's a spouse, a significant other, you know, friendship, a family member, whatever it might be, all of these relationships, like I had to change who I was as a person, as the lifestyle, and they went on their own path and their own journey, whatever that looks like to them. And I feel what I did was right. They did what was right for them. Like Anthony said, it's a no fault situation, but sometimes I know I feel a lot of guilt sometimes for not being friends with people anymore. Or, you know, I feel like I'm the one that left the relationship because I'm the one that made the bigger change, or, you know, made the more, I'll call it a loud change, because I obviously haven't been quiet about what I've been through. So I guess maybe that's one of those things that I'm dealing with, is the difficulty of how I'm viewed from myself and from other people.
Well, and that's, you know, it's like in that way, it almost feels like the hand that you're dealt at the table, so to speak. And this is what I mean by that is that so many people I've seen have been dealt different hands of a mixture of either resistance or all cards where there's just total, you know, lack of support. And I know that, Gary, that it wasn't like total lack of support. There was no support whatsoever. Everyone was against the changes you were making, but I know there was a lot of resistance. And in other cases, there's not as much. And I think that when, you know, it's all about how you respond to that hand, like, but at the same time, it's hard because there are more casualties if you're getting dealt the hand of the heightened resistance. And I know someone on here shared, Susan Jones, thank you for tuning in, Susan. And she said, I lost a 7-year relationship when I made hard boundaries for myself. He tried to be supportive and I didn't judge his choices, but ultimately he was resentful if I wasn't flexible. Perhaps he had to defend his choices. So that's someone there that can definitely relate. And, you know, again, there's an article that we have on the website, Dr. Mondo website, where we talk about these characteristics of folks that tend to be overweight since childhood, people pleasing, over accommodating. You know, these are all things you have to shed in order to stand up for your health. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. You know, I think we can all agree. You're just going to cave in and accommodate everyone else. Like I think BJ mentioned earlier, and put yourself last. So you have to set those boundaries. It's really tough because what you're hoping is that people will be flexible and move with you, or that their own change is moving them in a similar direction. So it's not that you're opposing them, but that you're actually moving or encouraging them to go in a similar direction. That's not always the case, right?
Right. You know, I'm reading a lot of these comments, and I'm thinking more people are more interested in the topic of losing friends than over a marriage divorcing. I think you know, like they said, like the statistics of you're saying that there's, you know, 75% of marriages are weight loss and then divorce, but I think more people are interested in the topic of losing friends.
Yeah, I know Richard said, besides marriage, any of you lost friends after your transition? Sarah Shannon said, I had someone tell me that it was as though I joined a cult. My plant-based doc is the cult leader. Sheesh. Yeah. So I think that's fair. I think that honestly, the marriage thing, my guess, and I could be totally off, but it's hard to get on here and talk unless the relationship's already ended. If you're going through this relationship, you're probably just where that's really being challenged. You're probably not commenting as much as you're watching. But I think that the friends thing is universal, and so I do want we can talk about that for a moment. I remember, you know, in the research with The Biggest Loser, there was this one girl that said, I literally went back to my group of friends and they said, what are we going to feed her now to make her one of us again? Because she had lost the weight. And they were telling her, no, you take the picture. You can't be in a picture because you make us all look, you know, overweight. And so there was a lot of that pushback. Eventually, she did struggle and put some of the weight back on. Theoretically, it was in part maybe because her why wasn't as deep. But also, too, it just sucks because it's hard. You know, she got all these hurdles, whereas there's another guy that we interviewed in the research that he came home and his wife's like, hey, I lost 100 pounds while you were gone. And all of your family and friends are doing exactly what you're eating. You're the new expert. We all want to, you know, join in. What do we do? You tell us how to be healthy. So, you know, in those ways, it's really tough when you have a mixture of those hands. But yeah, the friends thing, Anthony, I know you said that it was already something for you that you were used to being different, but did you feel like you had to lose some friends in the process of even transitioning some of your behaviors?
Oh no.
There's Anthony.
I don't hear Anthony.
I don't either. He's pondering. He's deeply pondering.
Oh, sorry.
Well,
Can you hear me?
Oh.
There we go. We can hear you now, buddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Technology is amazing, but it also is a pain in the butt sometimes.
I know.
I haven't lost any friends. I do see some of my friends less often than I used to, and less often than I would honestly like to. It's more because of, you know, just the stage of life I'm at. You know, the ambitions I have kind of with helping other people, the things that I have going on with my family, the ages that my kids are at. So, I mean, there are people, but I have, my friends are there, and I've gained so many more friends. And when I say, yeah, BJ's waving, BJ and I are now friends. Gary and I are now friends. When we're in the same state, we're going to become friends, Dr. Mondo. But
that's right.
But do you know what? So I really don't. I'm trying to think, and I haven't. I mean, my buddies have a motorcycle shop down the street, and I go over there probably probably less than half as often as I used to go over there to hang out. But when I go over there to hang out, it's like I never left. You know, it's like I walked away. And these are just friends that we've been friends since we were kids. You know, and it really hasn't changed that much. I mean, the relationships haven't changed. The time spent together changes, but that's because of you know, everyone has a busy life these days.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things I could tell. I think just that, like, so Gary said the lifestyle change, and you know, I think that's the thing. Again, like, this is bigger than weight loss. We say it every single week that this is not. It's about rewriting your story. It's not about losing weight. Losing weight's a facet of your story, and it's a big part, but it can't be everything. But yeah, like, I look at my life now. I was joking around earlier that the only vice to have is, you know, this is coffee, not beer. It's this coffee because I've given up, you know, because of my own choices and my lifestyle. You know, I used to be a guy that would recreationally partake in marijuana and, you know, and drink beer and there's a lot of things, you know, and fast food, and there's so many things that I was ingrained in my relationships that I just don't do now. And you know, I wouldn't say that I've lost those friendships, but they've definitely dimmed a lot in terms of the ones that haven't changed in those similar directions. And I think there comes a certain point, and maybe there's a lot of people out there that are facing that. There comes a certain point where you have to really define, what are you standing for? That's it. And some people are going to really stand with you on that, or they're not. And that doesn't mean that they're right and you're wrong or vice versa. It just means that you're gonna have to go through defining yourself. You do need community on whatever side you're standing on. And I know that's something like that's been hard because I have had a lot of friends that have grown up that are brothers to me. And I also have developed a lot of new friends too that are more in my community and maybe doing some of the things that I'm doing in terms of the different lifestyle that I live now. Again, not bad or good, just saying it's different, and you have to make a stand for that. So I do think, again, out there, I know we're running out of time here, so I want to just say this. I do think that if you're going through losing friends or this crossroad with friends, it's totally common, and yeah, so common out there. Now, Tammy Hornsby says, my husband's getting a lot of attention. He's never been thin. I'm afraid he will leave me since he married me fat, and I'm still over 100 pounds fat. It's created so much fear in me. Okay, so this is the stuff, again, that I'm theorizing that not everyone is having as much courage as Tammy is. Thank you so much, Tammy, for sharing this. I hear this all the time. People send me emails about it. We talk about it in counseling sessions, but it's hard to talk about it in this sort of format. Again, I want to mention that this is stuff that, this is, again, the things that I think that is part of what makes up some of this statistic is that it's a big change. I know that there's been a lot of couples that will say, we didn't realize it until one partner got thin, but it was almost like there was some security in my partner being overweight because I never had to worry about them leaving me. Now they have all these options. Now I have this insecurity. Am I enough? Am I not enough? So what I'll say to you, Tammy, and that is that I think a lot of people go through that. That's a season of change and transformation. But I think that the key has been highlighted tonight. It's all about dialoguing about that, communicating about that. And I hope this is where I would tell couples, go get couples counseling right now. At a point like this, you're not. It's not wrong for you to feel the way you do and feel some insecurity brewing. And it's not wrong for him too to really make a decision. Maybe, and I don't know your situation, but often, he probably enjoys some of that new attention. But that doesn't mean that he's going to leave the marriage or cheat or anything like that. So how does he balance the two? And how do you balance the two? I think it's a really challenging process, but as Anthony, DJ, and Gary all mentioned, just that communication thing. Use this as an opportunity, an invitation for deeper intimacy. If you can talk through this really uncomfortable conversation, you can talk about just about anything. Guys, would you agree with some of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
yeah. If it's Tammy, right?
Yeah, Tammy.
Yeah.
Tammy, if you're having these insecurities, you need to have a conversation right now. And I'm telling you that from the bottom of my heart. So please take it for whatever that's worth and have a conversation for however you need to have it, whoever you need help from, you need to have that conversation, because I can see where this path leads if you stay quiet on the situation. So please, whether it's one of us or whether it's a professional in your area or whether it's a friend or just having the conversation between the two of you, take it from the bottom of my heart, have that conversation right now.
Yeah, I love the urgency that you're saying. That it's so true, because honestly, you don't know when it's too late. Unfortunately, often we know it's too late in hindsight, but you don't know. Like right now, if you're feeling that, it's valid. The whole 24-hour rule of like, if tomorrow you're still grappling with it, then talk about it if it's in relationship with someone. And especially goes for your spouse. I know you've been grappling with this probably for longer than 24 hours. It's really common to. And this is, again, where part of I want the show tonight and just the courage of all of our panelists and everyone for tuning in. And then the research that we're sharing and the program that we have, that I want all of that to create this movement of saying, let's give you a talking point. The talking point is essentially tonight's discussion, that you can use this as a way to bring it up. You don't have to not bring it up out of left field. You could say, I watched the Facebook Live. Maybe you can invite him to watch it with you and say, this topic came up. It's super common. Again, I think that's where the roadmap piece comes in. If people have been given a roadmap, if you guys are given a roadmap to say, hey, when he gets to about, this range of weight loss, it's common for him to get new attention. It's common for you to feel insecure. And now, guys, you can go talk about that and really dialogue about that. I think the success rates, or just the ability to find that as an invitation for intimacy, can be so much greater if you do this cutting. So I'm glad you tuned in tonight, because I agree. I think right now is it, and she's continuing on your side. I told him, he shut me down. He said he loves me and he'll never leave me. So, you know, and that gets into it. So when you get to a point like that, and we talk about how to have the hard conversations in the program, that's where you go, okay, well, I'm going to go. I mean, this is the therapist in me coming out, but I would tell you, then you're going to make an appointment for counseling, and it's going to be couples counseling, and he's either going to go with you or he's not, but you're going to go. And that's what I would urge you to do if you've taken the necessary steps to already bring it up. It's this important to me that I'm actually making time for it. I'm just asking you to show up and hear me out. So I think it's something that you really have to consider doing. And I know it's not easy, but I think it's something you have to consider doing. So I would agree with the urgency that Gary is sharing there with that. Yeah, the urgency is definitely now. Yeah, so much great kind of feedback and stuff coming in. I do want to end here in a moment, guys, with a couple, fire off some tools and some takeaways. I know we've already done that. Is there any final thoughts you guys have? I know the time's flown by, but is there any final thoughts you guys have that you want to share before we wrap this up tonight?
There's one other thing that I wanted to talk about, if my volume is working.
Yeah.
So I did want us to take a few minutes to just talk about what does sharing this statistic, what can we expect, or what can we hope it does or does not do for other people? And this is from what kind of mindset does it put people in? You've mentioned, I think you've done a great job at saying to use this as a tool, to basically use this statistic as a positive thing. But what is the risk of saying 75% or even 80 or 85% if it's some kind of weight loss surgery? These people who go through this weight loss using these methods will end in divorce. What kind of seeds does that plant, and what kind of mindset or expectations does that create? And how careful do we need to be with these things in order to be responsible, to not kind of create this like self-fulfilling prophecy where we're basically putting this statistic out there, and then everyone's either consciously or subconsciously working to make it true, Like, I personally really worry about that. And it's the reason why I don't watch the news much, and I don't get caught up in statistics. And when I see and hear statistics, I kind of say, well, look, I really care what happens with it, this N of one, right? Like what's happening in my life.
Right.
And everyone's situation is different. And you talked in the beginning, there are so many variables that can be isolated in all of these cases. And so I guess just what kind of mindset can we create? How can we make this even more positive? How can we actually add some value for people, that, the fact that we had this discussion, so that people can take it away and do something good with it, rather than kind of spiral down into that doom and gloom kind of area where we create this self-fulfilling prophecy.
I love that. Guys, I want to say this, and then BJ, Gary, jump in response to that too. I just want to say, yeah, the whole, it's easy to get lost in headlines. And so the headline here tonight, of course, is 75%. And that's maybe what even had some people watching. And it's easy to almost say we're sensationalizing that number to get people in here to watch this tonight. The point isn't to use this statistic and to freak people out or create self-fulfilling prophecies, but that is a good point. I find the same struggle with the medical research that talks about as high as 95% of people who lose a drastic amount of weight will gain it back within 5 years or less. I used to lead every talk that I did with that to try to scare people straight, get their attention, but often it just made people sink into their seats and become deflated and feel hopeless. And what's the point of even trying? We don't want that with this, and we didn't want that with the weight loss stuff either. It's more, I think, to the point of saying that, on one hand, we haven't been doing enough to support people by providing the psychological relationship support that is needed and guidance that is needed. Hopefully tonight goes to that. But yeah, and then I think the other part is just saying, look, this just proves that weight loss is a big change for your system to go through. We can grapple all day long over how high the number is, but we know that any major stressor thrown into a relationship puts it into really survival mode. And that's where you start relying on some of those old behaviors and mechanisms. So my hope is that for everyone that's listening tonight and that's tuning in, they will be able to really take this as an opportunity to say, I walk away and say, I don't have to be part of that statistic, but I will have to put some work in. I think the work that will come and just to fire these off is take time to make the conversations, right? You have to have the difficult conversation. Carve time out for this. Allow yourself, if it's not in counseling, at home, to be disciplined enough to invite in. You don't have to co-sign on your partner's fears in order to validate them. But if you create this idea that, you know what, you can have your experience, I can have mine, and we can both share it, and we don't have to say, objection, Your Honor, that's wrong. You just, because you feel it, I understand, I'm here to support you on it. That's how you can really grow through this. So my hope is that what we can do with the statistics tonight is really to create awareness that part of the reason why it's so high is people aren't talking about it. And so we do run the risk of that self-fulfilling prophecy only if we continue not to talk about it. I hope people tonight, and like Tammy who's tuning in and others, they'll go home tonight, or they'll end this broadcast and they'll start some dialogue with their partner about it, even if it hasn't gotten to a point where it's problematic. Talk about it now. Have you ever been insecure about some of the attention I'm getting? Have you ever felt like at times I'm being too selfish in, how I'm putting some of my exercise in front of some of the things that we do? I think those are all good conversations to start having now. BJ, Gary, anything to add to that?
Can I just have one more thing? So I guess my biggest hope would be that someone comes away from this realizing that they have some say whether they become part of that statistic or not. Because I don't wish for anyone to stay in a relationship that they're not happy with, whether it's a friendship or otherwise, right? But if you want to get out of it, you can. If you want to stay in it, you can. I guess that's what I would like people to have. That it's a choice. It's you at least have some say in whether it happens or not. You can't have all the say because there is another party involved, right? And if they just hit the highway, then there's not much we can do about that. But I guess that's what I would hope.
Yeah, there's some agency. Right, absolutely. Gary, BJ, anything else to add to that too?
Really fast. And I really hope that the people would think that, the statistic of a divorce being high is hindering them from losing weight, from a vanity aspect, or losing weight for their health reasons. And, if your health improves and your marriage is strong, even a strong marriage has its weak moments, but I just think that just being able to work together and improve your health, I think would make a strong marriage, I guess, if working together.
Yeah, actually you have to find that commonality with your current partner, or if it ends up like, in some cases where you have to stand up and there isn't reception, and we heard that again from people tonight, then sometimes, unfortunately, you have to make tough calls about staying in the relationship altogether. Yeah, Gary, any final thoughts to add to any of that too?
I'm just here to make sure that people are aware of what they're doing and not doing, because I talk to enough people on the phone, and I have enough people call me and say, why aren't my wife and I getting along? What changed? What's going on? And when you talk to them for 2 hours on the phone and you figure out that they stopped hanging out together, they stopped communicating. And part of the reason is they started walking together, or they started running together. And now one person's off trying to run ultra marathons and the other person's just trying to stay healthy. Unless you're conscious of that, you're going to end up as that 75%, but it only takes one step, the same step that gets you off your couch, the same step that starts a conversation, same step that puts better food on your plate. It's just, you got to be conscious, and you just got to take that step, and you got to do what's scary. I know it sucks and I know it's fearful, but you got to take that step towards fear. So that's what I'm hearing.
Hey, and I think that's a great way to kind of summarize all this. Where there is fear, our natural tendency is to avoid or move the other direction. But what makes us successful, and what makes all three of you successful as athletes, and is what's made all of you successful in your health journey, has been embracing and encountering that fear and moving towards it, as opposed to just naturally away from it. The same goes for relationships. Have the hard conversations, and I think that's my big call to action. Go have a hard conversation tonight and report back. Like, tell us about what it was like next week on the broadcast, or go back into the feed. Let us know how you were impacted by that, because, you know, this is an opportunity. And I always say, again, you know, it's that Ray Dalio quote, right? But it's, you know, growth is pain plus reflection equals growth, right? So if you want to grow, you have to have pain, but you also have to reflect. You can't avoid that. But the pain is an invitation to grow. So this is painful, and this transition is for a long time been understated. So my hope tonight is you have the difficult conversations, you realize this is tough stuff for relationships to go through, but it's a great invitation to create some intimacy as you move towards those change. Guys, you guys are all awesome. I really appreciate all of you for coming on here tonight. All of you are getting one of these just because this was already due to you. I don't know why I'm going to give you a second time around. Every guest on the show is getting one of these finally. We just finally got it printed, so these are the T-shirts. And anyway, so you guys are all getting your shirts by next week. Anyway, and that's one just token of thank you. The other token of thank you is that all of you guys are so motivating to me, that just from, you know, being interviewing you guys each week, now I'm running more. I know all of you guys are runners, and so thank you guys for that. I'm signed up for a marathon, so thank you for the pain and misery that my body will be enduring as a result of you guys telling me to do stuff like challenge myself and go in the direction of fear. And, you know, today I was on the trail with my son and almost, you know, ran into a snake. So these are all things I can thank you for. So I appreciate all of you in many, many different ways.
Oh, thank you for everything you've been doing too. Thank you.
Yeah, for raising this awareness and bringing us together. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's awesome, man. I just love that we can do this. I know everyone's been saying they love this group, they love this dialogue. I think the panel thing was a total success. And by the way, it came organically, again, from a suggestion that Anthony made, which tells you that make suggestions, guys, because we're listening, and we will just incorporate these into these episodes as we go. Anyway, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. We will have an office hours Thursday. You can tune in if there's questions we didn't get to. Tune in Thursday, and that's always going to be at 7 o'clock Eastern, where we will take your questions on office hours. I'll be having a guest with me again this week, Sheldon Masty, who is a gym owner. He'll help you with more of that side of things, and we'll take some of your questions. And then next week, we're back with another episode of Writing My Story with Dr. Mondo. And we're live here from Pachamama. So back to drinking this cold brew, even though it's probably not a good time for me to do it. But yeah, I think I'm going to have some more cold brew. You guys hang out in the lobby. I want to talk to you just for a minute longer. But again, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. If you like this broadcast, like it, share it, all that good stuff. We appreciate you guys every single week for tuning in. And remember, like we continue to say, it's not the size of the step, but the direction that counts.